Okay, so Anne, since you selected the book, you want to get started?
Yeah, well, I was just going to start with a little bit of the history of Vietnam, just, because we all read the book, so I don't need to do an outline of that. We know what that is. But I don't know if you felt the same as I, but you kind of wished you knew a little more about where this all came from. And Vietnam was always occupied by some colonial power, and they just simply wanted their own culture. And this was their, trying to ward off all these people that were trying to control them. Well, the longest was China. That was back a while ago. Then the Chinese had some internal situations of their own, so they kind of faded out. And France invaded in 1880, and it became French Indochina. The French did not treat the Vietnamese very well. It didn't go well. And Ho Chi Minh was the leader. I can sure remember that name. And he was looking around for some help to get rid of the colonial people, especially the French. And, and so anyway, he looked at Russia and he thought, well, they got rid of their czar and they became independent. Maybe it is possible to do. So he befriended Lenin and kind of started to follow his lead. And so the communist ideas then were perpetrated by Ho Chi Minh, and it started to become a communist country. And then,
But he was, at that point, he was not a political leader. He was just I don't know, he was a leader, but didn't hold office.
no, well, he was definitely the leader. Yeah. So then in 1940, Japan invaded Vietnam. Well, you know who else Japan invaded in 1940? So they didn't last long as far as being in Vietnam. They had a Pacific War to take care of, and so they actually surrendered. And then the French came back, and so again, excuse me, Ho Chi Minh looked around, and he looked to America, hoping that the U.S. would support him. But America supported France instead of Ho Chi Minh. And in 1964, the U.S. invaded Vietnam. Now, the Vietnamese were a little confused about this because they said, why would the U.S. attack us? We didn't do anything to them. What's going on? And so, of course, it was the U.S. I forget, who was the guy that was, I know it was Kennedy was the president, and then it was Johnson took over, and that's when the war really escalated. Anyway, after the U.S. invaded, they started to get propaganda against the U.S. in North Vietnam because the people were kind of simple and a lot of people uneducated. They didn't get TV and they didn't have a daily paper, and so they really didn't know what was going on as far as the war was concerned. And so that was a good time for the communists to infiltrate, and they told them that the Americans were ugly and they were just vicious and all kinds of negative stuff. So it made the North Vietnamese even more adamant about crushing the Americans. And so it made them fight harder. And anyway, this went on for a few years, as we all have experienced. I happened to be at Cal at the time. I was there from 67 to 70. That was right in the middle of the war, and it was really quite something to be there. There was so much anti-war stuff going on.
Where was it you were in? Where were you?
I was at UC Berkeley.
Ah,
Yeah, during the time of all the riots, and we had the National Guard on the corners, and it was really amazing. And I had two little kids at home, and all I wanted to do was get through my classes and go home. And it was hard to do. So anyway, actually, it seemed that the war sort of petered out on both sides. The Americans were sick of the whole thing, and what do you call it? The morale was really low on both sides, and the Vietnamese were sick of it too. Because they were not given like a year that you had to be in Vietnam. They had to stay for the whole thing. So some of them had been there like for 7 or 8 years, and they just were. Everybody was tired, and so it just kind of came to an end. And it was really interesting because the Vietnamese people their desire was for liberty. It wasn't for communism. So anyway, that's the end.
Yeah, I just want to interject something. It wasn't that the United States was tired. It was they started drafting college men, young, white, besides black, brown, and every other color. But the white men were like, and they were college age. And so those were the big, big protests. And that protest affected Washington and their policy. The college age boys that were being drafted were not going to stand for it. They were burning their draft cards. They were going to Canada. And in fact, I married Michael to get him out of the draft, which it worked. He became, instead of 1A, 2A. So it was really the anti-war movement in the United States, why Johnson had to finally pull out.
yeah, I agree. So one of the reasons the French were there was rubber. That was a time when how to make rubber became known, and it was discovered how to do that, and the rubber trees grew very well in Vietnam. So that's what they were doing there.
It always comes down to the money, doesn't it?
Mhm.
It's always something to do with oil or some goods.
Right. And the taxation that the Vietnamese felt, whichever big country was trying to colonize them, half their money or a big part of their money had to go to the foreign power. It didn't stay in Vietnam. So it was like individuals were being taxed to feed the colonists. And so, yeah, it reminds us of the Tea Party. We didn't have no taxation without representation. They were fed up. They were fed up giving their money and their prosperity, which they didn't have any because of the horrible things that every colonial power tried to take from them.
Another thing that brought the North American troops out of Vietnam was they had a huge loss in the Tet Offensive.
Yeah.
Huge,
Right.
huge military loss, and that just taxed the Americans too much. But
yeah,
why did they have a military loss? Do you know?
it was the Vietnamese launched the Tet Offensive. The Tet is a Vietnamese holiday, or they I can't remember exactly what it is they celebrate on that particular date, but they called it that because that's the date of the year they did it. And America's lost huge troops, and just it was a big military loss.
I think Tet is like their New Year, I believe.
Yeah, that could be.
So it was a big holiday, yeah.
Thank you, Anne, for that background. So
Yes, thank you very much.
should we talk about the book?
Yes.
Anne, you want to start?
Not particularly.
Oh, well, you don't have to. Maybe there might be somebody else who wants to start. How about Jana?
Yes.
You said you love the book.
I did, but I feel uncomfortable starting. I never like to start.
Oh,
I
all
wanted
right.
to say hi.
Go
I wanted
for
to
it.
say hi to Margaret because I've never met you. Hi, Margaret.
Hi, nice to
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I have a lot to say, like I usually do. I have always been drawn to the immigrant story.
Oops. Frozen.
You're frozen.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I'm sure she realizes it, but what she could do about it is to tech. Oh dear, from tech to tech.
right.
Well, she's regrouping. I just wanted to say hi, y'all, and I'm gonna stay on a few minutes, and then I have to drive back home. I'm an hour away from home, and it'll get dark.
Okay.
So, and I won't
Oh,
have
yeah.
it while I'm driving. So, I just wanted to stay on for a little bit, though.
Thank you for
Sure.
coming.
Nice to see you, Sue, and nice
Yeah, I
to
was
see
wanting to
you.
hear about this book. Yeah.
Where's home,
Margaret, you're a
Susan?
new member.
Where's home?
Oh, home is El Cerrito, but I'm out at Inverness.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
oh.
Yeah, for a very good retreat because there's no place to go. I was just in a retreat house since yesterday. Anyway, yeah, and somebody I was going to say somebody came to the art reception on Saturday, but I can't remember who.
I did.
Anyway, you did. Hi, yes, hi
Yeah,
Becky.
it
Thank you
was
for coming.
great.
And I did too.
You.
Oh,
And then I saw
Yes.
someone from our group at the panel discussion.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, right. Roberta, I believe.
Roberta,
Yeah,
that's
Did I
right.
say that? Wait, am I right? Am I saying the right
I
name?
saw Roberta from a distance.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to derail the conversation. I don't see Jana yet, though.
She's trying to get back in. So
Oh,
maybe somebody else would like to pick up the discussion?
Susan,
Anybody?
Susan, did you read the book? If you did, maybe you could, if you want to share what you thought.
I didn't. No, I didn't read enough of it. Sorry. I really just wanted to hear about it because I'd heard so much. I'd heard Jana said she loved it, and already the little bit I've heard from you all, the background is making me. I will read it.
I'll say a couple things. The book was written by this gal, of course, who was born and raised in Vietnam, North Vietnam. So certainly it comes from an authentic source. She was born in 1973.
Mm.
And the book spans almost a century in Vietnam's
Yeah.
history.
Mm.
And it's told by the grandmother and the granddaughter. And there's actually 3 generations in there. And it describes a country in turmoil. I just jotted that the writing is lyrical in some places and blunt reality in others.
Mm.
And
Oh, sorry. This might happen again.
okay, go ahead.
And
Okay.
Anne is talking. And you want to give?
Yeah, it's fine. And let Jana go.
Okay.
So this was the second book I read from this author. This is her very first book written in English. Everything prior, I think, was poetry written in Vietnamese. It took her 7 years of research to actually finish interviewing and doing all this extensive research. But she actually wrote something in addition to this book saying she started her research unbeknownst to her when she was age 10. Because of her growing up, she ended up being a street vendor herself, and she sold cigarettes in a cemetery in Vietnam. And there they doubled the cemetery as an open air like movie theater, and that's what she did. And she would start asking people about their family experiences during the war and what it did to them. What I really loved is that this author is 1 year younger than me. It's amazing how much she's done and what she has done in particular for Vietnam and the people. She didn't even start writing until she was 30. So she was really helping to bolster the country and helping with infrastructure there. I really thought it was tender, her relation. I thought it was novel the way that the story unfolded through the eyes of Duc Lan, the grandmother, and Hung, the granddaughter Guava. It was really unique. I've never seen two voices like that. And someone kind of compared it to like a choral piece, and I would agree.
Mm.
There would be like the grandmother's story, and it was very beautiful to me. And then I could see that lyrics, that poet side of her coming out. I thought this might be a little random. I just jotted out a bunch of notes. I know that in Vietnamese culture that the tree is very symbolic. The bamboo tree is very much beloved. And here the bang tree was talked about, healing. I don't know. It was really beautiful, the depiction of the bang tree, and it appeared throughout the book. I liked the wooden bird, the sunga, the wooden bird that was given that she laid at the altar at the end, the symbolism behind that. Just to remind you, the mythology goes, the sunga stands for the mountain sing. That's what it's called. The souls of the dead are supposed to return when the sunga sings. And so that's like a reunion of everyone that was torn apart. Like the entire epic saga was the intention of keeping family and all that war did to it. I like the quote that was mentioned, history will write itself in people's memories. And as long as those live on, we can have faith that we can do better. And the grandmother echoes it in her own words, the same exact sentiment. I thought it was really heartrending. Like, even though I've read this twice, I've listened to it through audiobook and read it, because when you listen to it on audiobook, they pronounce and sing the Vietnamese lullabies and the prose they sing out, and I'm learning the language and it's tonal, so I enjoyed that. But okay, it was really hard for me when the mother had to, when Duc Lan as a young kid had to let go of all her kids to survive. That was really tough. And I'm not even a mom, but I just can't imagine that. And then the kids not even understanding, like, okay, I guess I just have to go, just like Min had to go, I have to go. I liked the part, okay, I liked how the story began with the Japanese in 1942 when Duc Lan was just a little girl, and she was bringing wares to Hanoi with her dad to sell, and then her dad was killed by the Japanese. I mean, even that piece of history, starting with the Japanese invasion and then all the way down past the Great Famine, that was 45, 10 years later was the land reform, and all of the effects on a personal level. I felt like this book did its greatest accomplishment in touching people because it was an inside out presentation. Vietnamese are not silent. Vietnamese are not stupid. Vietnamese have history. Vietnamese have rich culture. You just don't know it. I really enjoyed that. And what else did I scribbled down that since I was married to a Czech political, like they came here and sought political asylum, I thought that the history of Vietnam is very mirrored in the Czech history between the Germans and the Russians invading them. They were always occupied. They were always occupied. Their land was always raped. I kind of felt the same way about them.
It's true, Romania.
Yeah. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Jana.
Jana, can you you use the word beautiful? Can you describe what you saw or what?
Yes, I'm gonna try to find quotes, but I'm not sure I can be that fast. But I believe that the way that she wrote this book, the intimate descriptions of scenery, foods, the land, you could not do it unless you knew the land itself. It was too intimate. And I don't know how to explain it, but it was very poetic. The way that she would describe a field or a scene, and her own words were literally a inside person, like a local person describing it to us. I know that, didn't this group read The Sympathizer?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have
Yeah.
okay, I thought they did. And this is what the author of The Sympathizer, I loved his, bear with me, I'm not that fast, but the author of The Sympathizer wrote something about this book.
Oh, yes.
He
Yeah.
wrote, I hate it, I have to do everything through the digital. I will find it. It's only like 20 seconds, but maybe someone else can go
Well,
ahead.
I was just going to say, when you were saying
Yeah.
her experience, I love at the very, very end of the book, when
Oh.
she talks about her process, this paragraph just reminded me of what you're saying. And she's speaking.
Mhm.
The mountains sing embodies my yearning to know my grandmother and to bring the life the underrepresented women and children who often suffer the consequences of wars, and most, but must hide their sorrows to become pillars of strength and comfort for returning soldiers. Through Grandma and her granddaughter in the novel, I could talk to them, trace their footsteps, and imagine their dreams and hopes.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
I just loved that paragraph
Yeah.
when she talks about her journey
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
writing the book.
I'm sure it was very, I've said this before in group, but when you're an author, it's so nice because it's like free therapy for you. You just
Yeah,
you work it out. You work it out. Everything inside you just work it out through your writing. And that's really
And you
enviable.
get paid for it, maybe.
exactly.
That's
But
nice.
yeah. And then me as a person whose grandmother lived abroad in Hong Kong, and the other grandmother on the paternal side was so traumatized. She didn't want to talk. I asked. She didn't want to talk.
Oh,
I
Where
didn't
was she
get to.
from? Where was the other
She
grandmother?
was she was very poor, and she was from southern China, like from the Guangzhou province. And
Okay.
so I didn't get to enjoy this beautiful ode that this author wrote to her grandmother. It was very beautiful in another way too. And even the Mountain Sing title, she compared her grandmother to the tallest and strongest of mountains.
yeah.
That was so touching, very poignant.
Nice.
I'm still looking.
Anybody
You
else
guys
wanna give their impressions? Oh, you're so shy today. How about you, Beth? I'm sure you have lots to say.
Actually, I kind of like to wait.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, I'll go. So I didn't write any notes for talking about, and I finished this book a while back. I love the way it was written. I thought it was just beautiful. I was really transported to where she was and what was happening. I just was very taken by the narration. And of course the description of the sacrifices the mother had to make for the children and for herself in order for them to survive. Her goal was for
Yeah.
everybody to survive. I thought that was just amazing. And anyway, it was and of course, even though I lived in this country for a lot of the Vietnam War, not all of it, but so I remember the demonstrations and I remember so many things against the war. And so that part, I have firsthand experience from that. Anyway, there was so much discussion about the
Yeah.
war. When there were all the demonstrations. Everybody had something to say about it. And it was a horrible, horrible time, what we did to those poor Vietnamese people.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's kind of it for me. That's all I have to say. I love what you said, Jana. So yeah, I can't say it better.
Oh,
Yeah, I can go next because
Okay.
mine won't be very long. And Jen, I really appreciated all your insights as well as yours, Anne and Margaret. Is this your first time at
It's-
this meeting?
It's my second.
Oh, you're second. Okay, well, welcome to the group. And I do find reading harder these days. I used to love to read, and now with Netflix and Amazon Prime and anything Channel 9, I just I like movies. I love and not novels and movies, but you gotta put them into your own little.
Audiobooks, they're a great way.
That's true.
Don't
Here to
mind, you have
audiobook.
to work at it more. But so this book, I read the beginning of it, and very detailed. I mean, she's such a detailed writer. And I guess because of the wars that are going on now with Gaza and Ukraine, I was like, oh God, I'm reading a book about war. I see it on the news every day about war. I just hate it. And I must say, Ho Chi Minh is a hero of mine. I mean, the fact that this man could rally his country, and certainly it was split, to defeat all these colonizers, I thought it was amazing. I thought, and still, and it's really interesting to me that the Vietnamese people have forgiven us, and we've have trade and we have tourism with them. So reading this book I wasn't sure where she was going to take it. I wasn't sure if she was going to end up in the United States and condemning the government of Vietnam. So I was glad that didn't happen, to tell you the truth. And I really got how much, and I've heard this from other sources, that Asian people, Vietnamese people, are very family orientated. And it really was amazing to me that she would meet a stranger, a man, and she'd call him uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like very
yeah.
familiar. It's like when you're meeting a friend, but you're really acknowledging and asking for help. And they certainly did help. And some of them were enemies, and they were terrible. That what was it? Ghost man, I forget, evil ghost man that had tortured and
It's Wicked Ghost.
Wicked Ghost, that's
Yeah.
what it was, yeah. But for the most part, the family and the grandmother was amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And I thought the description of the mom coming back from war was very, very real. How she just, she'd become a different person, and to hear her daughter wanted her mom, and her mom just wasn't there. She couldn't express herself. She couldn't talk. She couldn't even be with her daughter. She had to leave. She had to go with an aunt and live in a different house. And I felt that was very, very moving. And it rang true to me that war does these terrible, terrible things to families. And yet somehow, the grandmother managed to keep finding the relatives, keep being open. Even the people that had wronged her, she could eventually forgive them. There was a scene at the end where they go back to the house, and that woman's there, the old lady who had taken their house and kind of destroyed their house and had hurt the grandmother, but the grandmother didn't have any bitterness towards her. So I thought on a lot of levels that the book was really quite amazing. But for me, it was a little bit too long. There was so much about the struggles and the changes, and then more struggles, and then sometimes it got better. And also the whole thing about the land reform and how the government and the people had just, they became a mob. It was like the government gave them a reason to go and steal and take and be horrible to their neighbors who they'd actually had a decent relationship with, but all that bitterness and feeling being ripped off. And then towards the end, they did say that the government acknowledged they went too far, that this didn't work out. But I don't think there was any real compensation for the people that they had hurt. So thanks, Anne. It was quite an interesting book, and I must say I'm very jealous about not having such a strong family ties in my life as a lot of people do it in their lives. And certainly this woman has a strong family support, and she was writing about in her culture, whether it's in the United States or in Vietnam, that they tend to have very strong family supports.
For some
One
reason,
thing
I just remembered the other book I read a long time ago about the war. But has anybody read General Giap's How We Won the War?
Mm-mm.
Anyway, that was a book written by a North Vietnamese general who explained why the North won. But it was popular among the leftists at one point. Anyway, long time ago.
You
Okay.
know, when Jackie was saying how the Vietnamese have forgiven us, I mean, the humanity in the book that she showed when she describes the American soldier. And yet she didn't hate him. I mean, the description of seeing his humaneness in the situation
Mhm.
was, I thought, just amazing.
Yeah.
I thought it was a little bit confusing, the fact of the way it seemed to shift around in time. Sometimes I wasn't sure where I was. It's, I don't know if you noticed that as a problem. It was kind of a problem for me. Not a big one, but I kind of wasn't sure it needed to be that way.
I had the same issue, and sometimes I was reading and I was like, where are we now? What? Yeah.
What decade?
Yeah.
Right.
One thing I noticed too was the idea of class distinction. With the boy that the granddaughter met, and how his skin was just a little bit darker, and that he called himself a country bumpkin or something like that, and it was what it was. And anyway, it was an issue, the fact that and apparently where you come from makes a difference in your skin color in Vietnam. Apparently, like if you're further south, you're a little bit darker complected. And I just thought it was an interesting point that we worry about our problems with color, and we're certainly not alone. It's everywhere. It seems that skin color is important.
Well, I wanted to say that I was in high school locally while you were at Cal, Anne, and then I followed you to Cal. I was there 71 to 75.
Oh my goodness.
I went on a number of marches in San Francisco and even, in the East Bay. And for me, it was sort of really an exciting time to grow up here. And it would seem, it was very political to me, and a sort of, my political awakening. But I didn't really think about it on this personal level. And so, and I almost wanted to avoid the book. Like there was a poll of which book to choose in the Cal Book Club, which one do you choose? And I avoided it because I don't know. I didn't want to read a book about war, given what's going on currently in the world. But I did find it so moving, and I love the book, and so it became. I mean, to read about, particularly a book set in North Vietnam, was just really incredibly moving. And I think the theme of forgiveness is huge in that there's on the personal level, but it's also the idea that the Vietnamese people or country have forgiven the US on some level, and many of them, and that we have all these relations. And I have cousins and friends who have been to Vietnam, and it really encouraged me to go. And so yeah, it was really significant for a book. So I'm glad you selected it.
My daughter was in Vietnam, and she said that it was really interesting, and she really loved the people. And the thing was, when they went to the caves, you know, because the caves were so significant in the war, that's where so many of the people, you know, the guys, the Vietnamese soldiers hid in those caves. And it was a bad scene. So that was the one thing she talked about, was that, and the fact that it was so humid there. But it was, you know, an interesting trip for sure. Beyond the Mekong Delta, it would be just, you know, an interesting thing to do. But
I'll go next if nobody else wants to jump in. Well, yeah, I'm going to tell you what I first liked about the book. I loved and appreciated the tenderness. Is it the tenderness? I felt like the relationship there was so much love. It was almost palpable. It was like when she had some food and she gave it, of course, to her aunt, offered to her aunt and grandma first, and just the little tiny things they did every single day, it seemed. It was the warmth and the concern for other, and the family ties, and I just really appreciated that. I think war sucks, and I was on the strike steering committee at Michigan State against the Vietnam War, and I was arrested and incarcerated, and I'm very proud of that. And I regret to this day, my friend Ellie Lau, Chinese, wanted me to backpack through Vietnam, and I didn't. And I am so sad, so sad that I didn't. And that would have been in the probably the 80s. I happened to work at the post office and in San Francisco, and you know, there were a huge number of Asians that I worked with, from Taiwanese, Indian from India, Hong Kong, China, and Vietnam. And 4 of my friends, and I consider them my friends, were Vietnamese. And you know, Ben Yao, Bing Lam, and Vivian Ng and Maine, all 4 of them were very different, and they were all from Vietnam. And you know, I know that they have a love for children. There's like a huge thing that sometimes their culture is like they really love children, which I think is in general. But of the 4, Vivian, I think, came from some tribe up in the mountains, and she was, I think, the Hmong. I don't know. There's a special tribe, and she definitely was from that. And she was way different in some ways. And when 9/11 happened, Ben Yao, I think, who fought, he never shared with me, but I believe he fought over there. He was older, he was my age. I think he fought in that war. And there were only 3 people in my station, myself, Ben Yao, Vietnamese, and a younger Chinese, that didn't lose it because it was that day I went to work, and everything was exploding, and everybody was, oh my God, we got to go war, you know, like they're so angry. And those 2, Ben Yao, because I think he literally knows about war, and he was so anti, and I was surprised that this younger Chinese they were the only 3 in the station, said, let's calm down, let's wait. But I just, so I was bonded forever to those 2, and we we had a special bond. And lastly, I want to say that Jana referred me to, because I love Vietnamese food. It's my favorite food. And she introduced me to Hong, how do you say Hong Tra? Hong Tra?
Can't hear you, Jenna, your mic's off.
Muted.
How do you say
Oopsie,
it?
I'm muted. Sorry.
Yeah. How do you say it?
Oh
Jen?
my gosh.
I'm totally in love with this place.
You're gonna make me go there after this meeting adjourns. Watch. I'm headed out the door. I'm gonna go
You
there.
know, when I went there,
What is it called? What is it called?
it's
Um,
called, how do you
She's
say
gonna
it?
hold it up for you. It's
Where's
really
it
close by.
Where's it located?
It's really close to everybody. It's on San Pablo Avenue, and it's probably not more than 4 miles from where everybody lives.
Wow.
Yeah, it's between Barrett and McDonald. On,
Oh, great
yeah.
recommendation.
Yeah,
So,
it's really good.
so, and there's a lot of people coming in and out, and I'm sitting there watching these young people serve, and this beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous Vietnamese woman. I couldn't believe her skin. Her skin was just, it was like porcelain, pure porcelain. I was kind of like in awe. I was like, oh my, huh. And oftentimes I do this, and it may sound weird, and you can judge me if you want, but I apologized for her for our role in the Vietnam War.
Wow.
We had a moment there.
Wow.
Yeah, I was almost in, it was weird. I just said, I just want to apologize for what we did. And it was just this super duper connection. And she took my arm, and I don't know, it was, I was almost on the verge of tears, but I'm watching this, you know, it's not that good. It's called Tour of Duty on PBS, and it's about the Vietnam War. And they had a little thing that said more Americans were killed during the peace talks and after the peace talks than before the peace talks in Vietnam. And it's about, I think war does something terrible to young people. I think it's a moral injury. It affects them, because if you were taught never, you know, it's a sin to kill if you believe in, you know, whatever, it's not okay, you know, or whatever religion you have, you know, and to be put in a position where you have a gun and you have to kill, it harms deeply. And I feel like, and we have done very, very, you know, My Lai is a perfect example of how ugly and horrible we were when they killed every living thing, man, woman, child, dog, bird, anything that moved was slaughtered at My Lai. So, and I wish we would, you know, we've paid reparations. I'm not even sure what reparations, if we have totally paid them, or, but we need to pay reparations when we, just like if you have a friend and you do something wrong, you want to apologize, you want to make it up, you want to make it better, you want to, you know, talk about it, work it out. And I think on a national scale, we need to do that, and we're going to have to do that, because our tax dollars, my tax dollars, are killing babies in Gaza, and that it's totally destroying me. So yeah, it brings up all that when you read something like this, but I love the grandma. Her survival instincts are just off the charts. You have to, like, wow. You know, it's just amazing what we as a species, and I like to think of us as a species, can do positively, and maintain our humanity in spite of everything. That's it.
I love the comments. Those are beautiful comments. Can I read quickly? I found it. The author of The Sympathizer.
Yeah.
Can I read it? It says, The Mountains Sing is an epic account of Vietnam's painful 20th century history. It's both vast in scope and intimate in its telling. Through the travails of one family, Nguyen, the author, brings us close to the horrors of famine, war, and class struggle. But in this moving and riveting novel, she also shows us a post-war Vietnam, a country of hope and renewal, home to a people who have never given up.
That's nice.
Beautiful.
Well written.
Yeah. Very.
Did anyone like that the guy that Guava ended up being with, Tam? Did anyone care for the little hook that he was the grandson of Wicked Ghost?
Well, I like the lotus he gave her. They had a lotus connection. I like the grandma said, you know, the sins of one's father or grandfather shouldn't be put on the grandson. So
Yeah.
it seemed like they had a connection, and You know, I thought the grandmother was just so wise. I thought she gave her granddaughter good advice.
Well,
Oh, I guess I should say something. It's
Okay.
difficult for me to say something because all of you have said the most incredibly profound things, and there's no way that I can even match that. But I love this book, and I started reading it, and I felt like I was there. I was with her descriptions, the land, the forest, everything she did, and the grandmother was just this person who held everything together. She it was really focused on women, which was interesting, that the women were so strong. The women were the ones that held everything aloft. And they were so careful and loving, and it just was an incredible experience for me to be there. And because during the war, I went on a lot of protest marches, and I was very upset by the war, but I was safe. You know, this put me in that place where it was horrifying, and the most gripping part for me was when the grandmother took her 5 kids, and they to fleeing the land reform and the viciousness that she encountered, and the destruction and the violence, and the way she took her children and had to leave them one by one so that they could live. And what kind of a thing is that to have to do? And knowing that she couldn't get back to her children for a long time. So I just you know, the book meant a lot to me. It was incredibly moving, and it was, you know, the granddaughter Guava, her narration was pretty down to earth and really clear. The grandmother had a lot more well, she was a lot older and had a lot of more experience, and was really much more tuned in to all the traditions and the mythology, and holding everything together. And I think that grandmother for me was a really incredibly special person. And this was a book that I want to reread at some point. So that's about all I have to say about it.
I want to add, because Roberta triggered something that I wanted to say that I didn't. I felt this book was comforting. I felt like it was a hug. It was like I just like being in the presence of these people. I can't explain it. It wasn't, sometimes you hate a book or you struggle with a book or you really love a book. It was none of those. It was just comforting for me. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, for me, it wasn't all comforting. Some of it was horrifying, actually, what happened. And especially the land reform and what happened with their neighbors that just attacked them and took their things. And it was this is what happens with wars. People, it turns people into monsters, and it's a horrific situation.
I want to clarify. It's the orbit of the family orbit. When I'm in that orbit and they're together and they're struggling or they're running or they're walking, it's in that orbit. Even though around outside their orbit is horrible, but it's like I like to snuggle up in that to those people. Yeah. Thank you for helping me clarify what I was thinking and feeling.
Any more comments? Anybody else want to talk? Well,
I don't know if I should or not.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to leave soon. I have company that came over a little sooner than I expected, but this has been a great conversation. Good to see everybody. Everybody
Good
looks
to
good to
see
see you, Jackie.
And dry.
Bye.
Bye.
Love your hair, Jackie. Oops, don't share it me. Getting longer.
Your hair is cute.
Oh,
Victoria, your hair is
Victoria?
lovely. You've gotten a really, you've got
Yeah.
a great hairdresser there.
Yeah, it's very
I
cute.
do. I do. Her name
And
is
I
Vicky
love
Pierce.
the color.
Thank you.
So
Interested.
I guess,
Yeah.
okay, I'll stick my neck out. Um, I think for anyone to try to encompass Vietnam's history, complicated history in a single book is a task that is an overwhelming task. And I think you fall into some traps. And a lot of them are people stand for something. Oh, this brother is the one who became a Catholic and went to South Vietnam. Uh, I felt in a way that I was reading Vietnam History 101. I thought I thought the grandmother was real. I thought the granddaughter was real, but I thought so many of the incidents were to tell a point, to illustrate some history. She wasn't Tolstoy. She wasn't, I mean, we're talking this huge task that she took on. For me, I prefer staying with somebody and going in depth. I didn't feel that this book went in depth at all. I can see all your comments about it being comforting, traveling with them, that they were nice characters. And I listened to an audiobook, so that may be a reason too that I didn't connect with the book as easily as some of you did, because I could keep hearing that declarative sentences one after another, after another, after another. And I thought, yeah, I can see why this is her first book in English. So here I am. Sorry for everyone else. I'm sorry that, to put a little, well, I'm not, I guess I'm just being, I guess I have to be honest. I
Don't
guess.
be sorry. I love it. I appreciate your viewpoint.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I would think this subject is so incredibly important. Any part of it is so incredibly important. Yes, I mean, the fact that I didn't know, I mean, she put together all this Vietnamese history that I didn't really know, and she put it together in a very palatable way because it was told through people, through characters. I appreciate that, but I almost would prefer reading a history book. I almost would prefer, or else get into the lives of one of these families at one particular time. That was I mean, to me, the worst thing was, Jana, you just saying that, what did we think about the Wicked Ghost, was it? Wicked Ghost that turns out to be the father of her fiance. Tum was his name, I think. And I thought I mean, that's just an example of it, of just this kind of egregious storytelling. Sorry, I don't mean it to say that strongly, but I wish I loved it more because I felt like I should have. I wanted to.
Well, you feel what you feel. That's right. So,
Yeah, I thought, I saw some places this is a great Vietnamese novel. I mean, we can't write the great American novel. I mean, this is certainly not the great Vietnamese novel. I mean, and maybe, and I thought, do I have a right as a white person to, and I thought, no, it's just the opposite. I can't say, oh, because she's Vietnamese, oh, because this is her first book, somehow I've got to give her the benefit of the doubt. You know, she should be held up as any other writer. You know, she should, I mean, that's how I think that's what non-prejudice is. You hold them up to the same standard of any other writer.
Beth, I just want to say one thing, and I appreciate your critique of the book. I really think that you should not apologize for telling the truth. This should be a safe place
Yes.
to real feelings.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty hard. And maybe apology isn't the word, but that it takes
Well,
a
you
lot
did
of
apologize
guts after
a
six
few
people
times.
say how much they love the book to.
Yeah.
So
Don't-
it's more
don't.
that I was just. That's a way of just saying. It's really hard for me to have six people say how much they love the book and me come out and say, I don't think it's very good.
Yeah. Well, I have had similar experiences, as you know, but it's hard. It's hard to go against the general feeling of things. You know, you just want to fit in, but you know, that's the purpose of book groups, is to critique it, you know,
I agree. Yeah.
tell the truth. And so that's all I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, I'd like to say that a lot depends on your expectation for a book when you pick up a book. And I probably have extremely low expectations. And I admit that. I mean, I'm not gonna write a book. I'm not writing a book. And I have a thing, and you all, some of you know it. Margaret may not know this about, but I have, and it's not like I think most life is mundane. It's just little things. And I mean, it common as white bread used to be, you know, I mean, it's like, and so when I find somebody that does a slice of that commonality, that mundacity or whatever, and it just opens my eyes to a family dynamic. And see, it wasn't so much because back in the 70s when we were doing seminars and teachings on the Indo-French Chinese, the whole, that we did so many seminars on that. And like Anne, I appreciate the history you brought at the beginning, but I wasn't looking for that. And that's why I really do like it when people are critical, because they're bringing something to the table that I hadn't given it any thought. And now I'm aware of that. And maybe my expectations are going to rise a little bit, but it still doesn't, I do still kind of, I have a little thing about, can you imagine what's going on right now, whether it's in Ukraine or in Gaza? Life is down, reduced to its fundamental elements, it's like, it's not, and the little thing, I don't know, it's so, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's just, I have a thing about little things, and I do. And so it's just the way it is. So that's, I apologize for my, obsession with little things. Yeah.
Well, I think an example of a book that took a huge topic but brought it down to the human level of these two lives is the one that you gave us, Roberta. I think and I always struggle for the name of it because my head, the first thing I think is kaleidoscope, and I know it's the
A paragon.
A paragon. I think that is one of the most. That is an author in my mind who took a huge topic, brought it down to the human level, and he succeeded in that is one of the top books I've ever read.
You're talking about the Ursula Le Guin book?
No, a paragon.
Paragon.
Oh, it's called The Paragon. Okay, that was before I was in the group. Okay.
Yeah.
Paragon, the
A
Paragon?
Paragon.
A paragon.
A Paragon, a Paragon.
We read it in here, Colin McCann.
Oh, okay.
And I love that book too. I love that book. You're right. The difference to me is that that book, the author was
Thank
dealing
you.
with an enormously deep subject. To me, this book is about not that. It's about a small family dynamic. To me, that's where
I liked that part too, that was about the small family, but what bothered me about it was she threw in all Vietnamese history and she used these people, a character here, a character there, to stand for, the famine, stand for the land reform, stand for this, so that they were one-dimensional. And you got through the whole history.
Right.
And you got through with the family that you believed in, but to me, it was too much. I wish she had concentrated just on this family and gone more in depth. I don't think she had to, I think it was very much a first novel.
Very much a what?
First novel.
Oh, well, I agree with what Roberta said, which is we should all feel free to say what we think and
Absolutely.
but there's
Yeah.
no judgment here. Everybody has their own opinion. I'm fine with that. So we have nothing else to say. So maybe we should just go to the next, just put closure, and the next book will be Will in the World.
Right.
I love
Right.
that book.
Yeah, you've said that. I'm glad.
I've really enjoyed that book. I got back to reviewing some Shakespeare.
Okay, so we'll meet next time.
Okay, so
Anybody else want to say anything at all?
sorry to miss next time. I'll be traveling, but I
What you
read
doing?
part of the book and was really enjoying it. But I returned it in case somebody's looking for it. It's back at the little library,
Where are you going, Becky?
Where are you going?
Hawaii.
Oh,
Wow.
poor little
Okay.
girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, with my grandchildren. Yeah.
Nice. All right, I just want to say I love this group. Thank you all.
Thank you,
You,
Christina.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.